But as I said, we're talking about my favorite games of this week, and for today I chose 2 games by the talented player from India, Praggnanandhaa. Many of you might have heard about him. He's definitely proven to be like just an amazing player. This past week, there was a tournament where some of the strongest players in the world, youth players, junior players in the world, were competing against each other in a tournament that was called that took place on Chess 24 and was called Polgar's Challenge. And there were 2 teams competing against each other, Judith Polgar's team and Vladimir Kramnik's team. The players supposedly have had coaching sessions with many other top chess players in the world, and they were ready to compete. And then the winner of this event, the young Praggnanandhaa, actually got the chance, as far as I understood, to qualify, and actually will be playing against the big guys in one of the next events held by Chess 24. All right, without further ado, let's get started with these games. So this is a game that was played between Mammadzada Gunay, which is a very strong female chess player from Azerbaijan, against Praggnanandhaa. The game started as follows: e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, d4 takes, knight f6, knight c3, d6. The classical variation of the Sicilian so far, until we get the e5 move. Actually, I always like this line, you know, like I remember when I was a kid, I was always struggling to remember all the Sicilian names. So, I mean, I would always mess them up. Even to this day, I feel like if you're just randomly waking me up and just be like, Sabina, tell me, what is the name of this, you know, Sicilian line? I would need a little bit of time to think about it, which one it is, and maybe I could get them confused. So, anyways, but anyways, so e5, knight b3. So far, so good. It's pretty much theory. And then bishop e3, bishop e6. I think depending on the move order, like sometimes black actually does castle here first, but Praggnanandhaa played bishop e6, and Mammadzada played bishop e2, sorry, queen e2. And this is kind of an interesting choice. Usually knight d5 is a move that's played here, but if you do want to move the queen, queen d2 makes a little bit more sense. Typically, that's the location for the queen. And then probably black would have castled, and I think the line goes as follows here: bishop b5, and then knight b4. And after that, black is preparing to play d5 and equalize, trying to equalize the position. But in the game, I don't know, I don't think it was a mouse slip. I think probably she had prepared this line to play queen e2 in this position. Having the queen there sometimes can be helpful, because if there's no queen on d2, you have the rook. You're kind of just placing the rook after castling. You're just placing the rook on the file and trying to stop d5, but maybe also have pressure on the e5 pawn. So that could have been an interesting idea, and the reason why she played that move. And then obviously castle, a4, and here there was also another game that was played longer time ago in 2017 between Sam Shankland and Emilio Cordova, and white played the same move as Mammadzada, and that was knight c5. What's the point of this move? As I said, this pin happens to be something that's bothering black, and it's definitely a much better location for the knight to go than to have to go to d2, right? So and now we're attacking the bishop in e6, we're attacking b7, and you have to kind of give it up. But a3, I like this game because it's like a really nice, like you're having some attacking ideas. There's lots of tactics. Sicilian games that are played in the Sicilian are always have so much material that is possible to be discussed, and I thought, oh, what a better way um, to choose the games of the week than to choose a game by someone who has proven who has done an amazing job this week in that Polgar challenge event. So b3, and now castle. In the game that was played, as I mentioned, between Sam Shankland and Emilio Cordova, Cordova chose to play queen to a5. The point, attacking the knight, obviously. I mean, now that knight is attacked as well. So if you take here, for example, I think it would be a mistake because of queen takes e3. And the point is that this knight is still hanging. You don't really have many places to go. So if you think that you're going to be able to win some material here, we can go king f8, and you cannot really take. I mean, this is kind of important to realize. Knight b4 is the idea. We want knight takes a2 and queen b2 mate. If you move the rook wherever somewhere, maybe check. You have to go king d1, king here loses to mate, and then maybe just knight takes e4. And the point is that after pawn takes bg5. And there's no better way for white than to sacrifice the queen, after which clearly black should be winning. Taking in e6 does not work. So here black, as I said, attacked those two knights, this one with the queen and this one with the pawn, because we're escaping the pin. Then the knight has to go to a4 and then castle. And that specific game continued king b1, knight d4, bishop takes d4. You're kind of forced. Bishop d7, and eventually Sam was able to win this game, but only after some mistakes by black. An interesting game that maybe you guys want to check later, but queen a5 is certainly an idea. But Praggnanandhaa just thought, okay, I'm not going to go for queen a5, I'm just going to castle, make sure I finish my development first. White doesn't have an easy way to attack black's king just yet. I think she's a little bit behind, like with this g4, g5 idea. She does have knight d5 eventually, but right now, black is the one who seems to have created a little bit more pressure on white's king. And so white chose to move the knight immediately. I think, in my opinion, since you've wasted the time to bring in the knight here, I think it's kind of important for white to take. Even after pawn takes, there's no outpost there anymore. I have some idea like this has happened once in a game that I played against Irina Krush, and she has created this weakness for herself in a Sicilian, and I was able to really take advantage of that weakness. I think if you're not able to prepare d5, that pawn will stay weak, and white can try to take advantage of it eventually. So, and besides, white moved that knight so many times, right? It was knight f3, knight d4, knight b3, knight c5, and now you're going to move it again. At least take that bishop, get something for the fact that you've wasted so much time. But she played knight a4, probably thinking about making sure her king is safe and then having ideas to place a piece in b6. And here, knight b4 is something that was actually tried in another game at some point between Vukovic and Pobor. Two players were not, so strong, like around 2000 level, but it seems to have happened before. But after this move, white played bishop c5, and now d5 was the move played in that game. And after e takes d5, this white was able to get a much better position. Okay, eventually that game ended in a draw, but white should be much better here because they have, big initiative and potentially staying with extra material. But instead of that, knight takes a2 and rook takes a4. considering that if you take that, you know, that is hanging. A line could continue as follows. Queen c7, and I think black has certainly compensation for the exchange, and it's certainly a type of position that one could play. But this move didn't occur in the game between Mammadzada and Praggnanandhaa. In this game, instead, Praggnanandhaa played bishop d7, which seems a little bit strange. I mean, really, it seems a little bit strange. It feels like he may have wanted to play knight d7, but instead with a bishop, like a muff slip. I'm not sure if that was the case, but it seems a little bit strange. In a way, you do have some idea to move the knight and then try to take in a4 maybe, but it just seems a little bit strange to just move the bishop from there because you're controlling d5 and stuff. It seemed a little bit strange to me when I looked at the game. Queen d2, obviously the queen is not necessary there anymore to take advantage of the d file. So he went queen to d2, she went queen to d2, and now knight d4. Bishop takes d4, pawn takes d4, queen takes d4. It seems like white has a really good position because of some waste of time by black. But what I like from here on is how black was trying to slowly improve the position. And of course, with the help of white, at some point he was able to win the game. Here, queen a5. You see, black has managed, despite the fact that he lost material, he has managed to create some play on the queen side by pushing that pawn forward, keeping white's king, you know, a little bit weak. Try to make a lot of moves to tempo, during which time white hasn't been able to do anything on the king side, which is something you usually want to do. You want to attack the other side, right? When it's opposite side castling, one person is attacking on one side of the board, on your king, the other one, meaning you, probably are attacking on the other one. But here it didn't quite happen, and now you have to be careful of various ideas. She went knight b6, which I like, rook d8, and here for some reason she played knight c4. She's made a little bit too many knight moves, in my opinion, white. b4 is a very interesting choice here for white. The point being, if you check, I would just go king b1. The king will be totally safe there. Considering that these pawns are, you know, far from each other, far from protecting each other. And now with the queen in g5, there will be ideas with h4, you know, g4, g5. White can start pushing the pawns now, and black doesn't have anything, doesn't have attacking ideas whatsoever. This knight in b6 is doing an amazing job at you know, just controlling the c file, the a file. So black doesn't have a way for the rook to be on a better location to attack. And you don't have an easy way to do things. If you move the knight to play bishop f6, this pawn will be hanging. So it just seems very tough. And plus, white has an extra pawn. But from here on, step by step, the position of black starts improving. Queen c7, played queen b6. Now he did not trade. He played queen to c8. If queen takes b6, knight takes b6, I think this position is once again much better for white. Usually, endgames are supposed to be better for black. From the Sicilian, I have to be clear on that. A lot of Sicilian endgames are supposed to be better, or at least equal, from the perspective of black. I cannot say from black's perspective if it's equal, but anyways. But in this case, it's different because white has an extra pawn, and there are quite some weaknesses in black's side, so this would make it kind of impossible, in my opinion, for them to save themselves. Knight c4 is an idea. That pawn will be falling. It should be bad. So he did not want to trade queens. He's still trying to have the opportunity to play some d5. White did not want to be greedy, but I think greedy could have worked here. Knight takes here, d5. For example, if you're trying, white can bring in the knight. And if you're trying to take here or something, we can go bishop c4. Black has some attack, but not really much on the c file. White's extra pawn is an extra pawn and is seems to be pretty good. I don't really see a way for black to get sufficient compensation. Instead, queen b4 was played, and now queen to c7. Maybe kind of a strange decision because you can still try to trade the queens, which is what she did. But black, no. And try again. No and no. Until black, because he's a stronger player, he decided not to repeat anymore. But you always have to be careful. This is something I'm always telling my students. Depending on the situation of the tournament, depending on the game, please don't let yourself influence by the rating of the opponent. Play the position you have on the board. If your opponent is much stronger, obviously, you are okay with a draw. If your opponent is much weaker, obviously you're not okay with the draw, but it doesn't mean you have to force things, because oftentimes when we force things, we get to have to fall for worse positions, and actually we could end up losing. So please be very careful with the decisions you're making, because it is possible that you mess up. Now here, Praggnanandhaa didn't quite mess up. He still has a balanced position with the move that he chose to play, not to repeat with queen c6. So that was good, but in some situations, a lot of us make this mistake. We really, really want to find a way to beat our opponent because we feel that we should win because we are stronger on paper. But that's when we make the mistake. So anyways, he played queen e6. Now white doesn't have a way to trade the queen, and now he is thinking to improve the position of his knight like this. Bishop may be going to f6, and you'll see what else happened next. So knight d7. White is retreating the queen, because obviously there was a threat of d5 at some point, so that's why the queen kind of had to go away from there. Now knight c5. And in this position, white had the bad timing at taking the pawn. Although in the beginning, a few moves ago, I told you it was fine. Here, it is not as fine to take, and you'll see what happened in the game. Knight b6 maybe would have been better, because after this, now they can place the knight here. So this move is never possible. And then if needed at some point, c3 is an option. White can proceed with the development, and just having the c-file is not enough for black to create any counterplay. But white took there instead, allowing black to play d5 and take advantage of the d-file. The king had to go back. I mean, he didn't have to, but he played there. And now a very, very interesting idea played by Praggnanandhaa was knight takes to e4. Very interesting idea. And white fell for the capture of the knight. It is very difficult, I think, to come up with something else. Obviously, that knight is hanging, but you can think of this move, and maybe now bishop here could happen, and then, I don't know, the knight would retreat. At least black got to win a pawn, but most likely white is better. But instead, Mammadzada took, bishop takes a3, and now she made a decision after which things are tough for white. She played bishop e5. She has to try to finish her development. Indeed, that bishop hasn't moved, and we're moved 30, so that's certainly, a big no for white, but white did win some material, so sometimes you can afford to make these kind of mistakes. Maybe e5 would have been an option. And then in case of f6, you can always protect that pawn like this. And he will keep attacking, and then maybe now bishop b5, because you're actually making the move with tempo. It's always important to do so. And after this, threatening mate and forcing the trade, sure, okay, we'll trade the queens. You don't have any other option. And we can do this, and obviously white shouldn't take, because it's helping black get the pawns to better placed, but this position should be kind of equal, Material is equal, opposite color bishops. Black has a weakness, but white stays on a back rank mate, so pretty equal, I would say. But this move was played instead, and then d takes e4, c3, to try to avoid, mates on the diagonal probably. But now, after c3, what do we notice? The second rank becomes weak. In some situations, you can consider that. And now, b5. So step by step, black is improving. Both players have made mistakes. Let's not forget, this was a rapid tournament. I think it was like 10 minutes plus some increment. I forgot the exact time control. I keep checking it, but I keep forgetting it. Not sure if it's written on my thing. No, it's not written. Now b4 would have been a nice choice for black. Trying to, taking c3, win a pawn. Black played here instead. Obviously no trade. So yeah, queen back, bishop takes b5, and now he pushed the pawn. And here maybe white after rook e1 could have tried to hold on to the position once again, because now if we trade, we cannot push further because rook e1 and the pawn will be lost. So it's definitely a difficult position, I would say, here. Okay, queen f3, rook takes d1, rook takes d1, queen e5, and here you would say that black has no compensation. Seriously, black has really literally no compensation, but Praggnanandhaa got lucky in this game. In a way, I chose the game because I thought it was like great chances for both sides. Praggnanandhaa did win the tournament, so you have to show a little bit support for that. In the same way, it's a female, which I like. She had an amazing game. Unfortunately, she blundered. It happens later. But also, it's always a fight, right? You see opposite side castling, you see attacks on both sides, you see an endgame, even bishop back here, rook d5. Look how great she played this part of the game. White played really well. Queen e6, and now bishop d3. That pawn is stopped. I think instead of bishop d3, had she played maybe bishop here, it's going to be kind of difficult for black to find a good location for the queen, because that pawn in e3 will be lost, and then with those 3 connected passed pawns over here, white has big chances to win. I mean, definitely. But she played bishop d3, and now she started weakening her position a little bit. c4. After rook e8, she blundered. She played bishop e2, thinking that she had to stop that pawn. But now had black played queen a6, it's going to be difficult to defend, because the queen enters on the dark squares, which you cannot protect, given that all your pawns are on white and this queen is on the other side of the board. But okay, both players were really low on time, so both kind of made some mistakes here. And then probably nerves, who knows. White played this move c5, after which, it's going to be game over. Queen d6 probably would have worked for white, just trying to trade the queens. And if you're not trading, maybe you can try to kind of hold on to the position like this, and then queen b4. The point is you're trying to cover the dark squares so that black cannot get the queen active and have mating ideas. But c5 was played, and now why not queen a6 instead of queen b6? If queen a6 here, a4 is an option, and then, if you're trying to enter like that, that would be, I think, queen here, still with tempo, followed by queen d6, and white is able to cover the dark squares. You don't have an entrance. So now this is the issue, that although white is trying to promote with that c-pawn, now the queen enters, and it's really tough. Check. Check, and white resigns, because now the bishop is hanging and it's game over. So I felt that this was kind of like a hard-fought game from both sides. Definitely Praggnanandhaa, got lucky in the end. Throughout, he had an interesting position. He equalized at some point, but then he's made some mistakes, letting white just very active. But nerves are also very important in such a tournament, and it's something you have to be careful for. My next game is also a game played by Praggnanandhaa, this time against another talented and famous grandmaster from India, Nihal Sarin. So both of these players are really, really strong, and I think we can expect a lot from them in the future. So definitely keep an eye on them. I chose this win by Praggnanandhaa. As I said, he did win the event, so it was only fair to choose some of his wins. This was a different kind of opening. Here, transposing into a Queen's Gambit. Declined. Knight 97, Bishop f4. Queen's Gambit declined with Bishop f4. All right, and here d takes c4 was played. I think this is like more of a modern approach. Before, people were more playing like c6 in this position. Some people would try bishop b4, but this is something that's played. D takes c4 is played more these days. So that line is like this, I think. Bishop e7, bishop d3, castle, castle, and then in this position, black can play the d takes c4 to take advantage of the fact that white moved the bishop, so they have to move it again, or b6. So both choices are possible. And usually what happens, white takes here, goes queen c2, bishop b7, rook d1, and, you know, game goes on. Knight e5 is an idea for white. This idea goes way back to maybe Pillsbury's time, where knight e5, this bishop would move away, and then f4 ideas. So definitely an old line that that many of you could or could not know. Of course, after castle, d takes c4 is an option too. And they used to play in the old days bishop takes c4, b5. The bishop would go back either b3 or d3 usually, or e2, actually e2 as well, a pretty famous variation. And then bishop b7 or a6, and then black would try to play c5, right? a6 eventually also has to be played, whether you played first or bishop b7, but then play c5, attack the center, and black would try to have a nice idea. But in the game, black chose to play d takes c4 instead, not c6, to defend first. He just chose to take immediately. Now e3, because obviously we need to get the pawn back, and black played b5. Knight to d5 is the other line here for black. The idea is that, you know, you cannot take as pawn takes, but you do need to take your pawn back. But because the bishop is in f4, when you take here, black can take the bishop, and then knight b6, followed by g6, and, you know, or bishop e7, depends what you do, g6, or bishop e7, and, you know, the position is pretty balanced. I like this. I think this idea is pretty nice for black. Instead, black played b5 in this position. Knight takes b5, obviously. You know, white is trying to get their pawn back. Check. Knight c3. Nakamura played this against Carlsen as well. This line, and Wesley So played it. Ding Liren played it. Many of the top players did play this line. It's a pretty known line. Knight d5 still with a similar idea, putting pressure on c3 and on the bishop. Now white kind of has to play a3. Knight takes c3. Bishop takes c3 is an option. And then knight takes f4, pawn takes f4, knight b6. This is an option for black, trying to stay, you know, on top, keep the c4 pawn protected, but it doesn't quite work, because technically white can still take it. And after takes, check, and takes the knight. And white actually stays with an extra pawn. So that's the reason why in this position, black usually ends up taking with the knight. And here you cannot get your piece back if you take with the pawn. Bishop takes. If you take the bishop, the queen hangs. So please don't make the blunder. You're technically giving up a piece here temporary, but there's nothing to be worried about if you learn this move, which is queen d2. And the point is that now both pieces are attacked. There's no discovery that's going to help black stay with the extra piece. The piece will be captured, and now everything will be fine. And in this position, there's a well-known line. I mean, a lot of people can try to play knight d5, but then this would happen, and then, you know, black can take here, here, go bishop b7, go knight b6, but the position is a little bit unclear with all of these double pawns and weaknesses for white. There's so many of them, but yeah, it's quite playable. In the game, however, and this is apparently known from some game that was played between Wesley So and Anand in 2016, Anand came up with this idea of sacrificing the bishop in a3. And people used to go queen takes c3. That was basically the way things went. That was the game Wesley against Anand. And then black would have to retreat to the bishop, and then we would trade it. Pawn takes, bishop takes e4, castle, and again, you know, bishop b7, pretty equal, a pretty equal position. But instead of queen takes c3, in that position, Praggnanandhaa came up with the novelty. Pawn takes c3. Bishop d6. Takes, takes, bishop takes e4. And now, material is equal, but I think it is a little bit nicer to have the pawns compact in the center. That a pawn, oftentimes, if you're not able to support it somehow, that pawn will be weak and potentially captured, and white can try to step-by-step fight to improve the position and eventually win the game, obviously. Castle, castle, bishop b7. So once again, like, you have to look at that a pawn and think about if it bothers you, if you're white, if it's like a far away past pawn that can help you, or a weakness. Let's see. Now, for white, what do you need to do in this position? You have to try to think of a plan. Clearly, you can try to get the space with the center to prepare to play e4, but then what? This pawn is also a pawn that you have to be careful for, because queen c7 can come in, followed by rook c8, putting pressure. You need to be ready to meet the pressure on the pawn. So Praggnanandhaa retreated with the bishop in e2. He probably tried to avoid the capture here as well. I don't think that would be a big deal, but just in case, he chose to place his bishop in e2, not in d3. Trying to bring the bishop and the queen on this b1 h7 diagonal is not that big of a deal, because they can always defend it so easily, even with knight f6, and you can't do so much. So you're not in a big rush here. c4, a5, and now rook f to c1. So Praggnanandhaa is improving the position of his pieces. Like I said, he's not so worried about that a pawn. Black has to try to push it, obviously, because that's his strong suit. But you cannot push it too much. The more you push it, if you don't have a way for your minor pieces to defend it, that pawn is going to turn out to be a weakness. Here, black made a luft. Make sure he doesn't stay on a back rank mate ever. And now queen c3. This move may seem a little bit strange, but this idea of moving the queen is to free the d2 square, which is a typical square for the knight in a lot of d4 openings. So you're maneuvering the knight to d2 to support e4, maybe f3 if needed, and bringing the knight to a better location, or bringing it on the other side of the board to attack the e5 pawn. This is a very tricky position indeed. It's not something very clear. It's not so clear that what your plans are with both sides. So it's nice to see games like this, because the more games you see, the more ideas come to your mind, and you will know how to approach similar games in the future, or similar ideas. And here, black probably can play bishop c6, or or try to push the pawn to a4 because he can support it with the knight, king b6 with the bishop in c6, queen in d7 if needed. He probably should push it, also doesn't allow knight b3. But instead, black played e5, which is not really such a necessary move because it opens this diagonal. And white immediately took advantage of it, bishop g4, pinning the knight. Now we may want to take at some point, maybe win a pawn. Not yet, because after takes, pawn takes, if we take in d7, queen takes, take, the knight will be hanging in the end. So we need to make sure the knight is protected, and then we'll see further what we do. Obviously, pawn takes back, right? And here, black made a mistake. He should have, as I said, pushed this pawn, definitely. White can make some error, something with h3, then go bishop d1, and try to take the pawn, but in the same time, black can try to improve the position of his pieces, go on the a file, bring in the knight to f6, try to play queen c6 to take advantage of the weakness in g2. Just try to make some moves with tempo, basically. But instead, he played rook e8. And this is a mistake. The reason it's a mistake is because white did have a threat after bishop g4. Their threat was to take the knight, and then this pawn would be hanging. Yes, so as I said, the plans for black would have been, instead of this e5, to play a4 or go knight f6 to try to go there, and then maybe bishop c6. That bishop definitely needs to be both on the a8 h1 diagonal or there, push a4, and then it's just try to support that pawn. And as you play, you know, white makes ideas, comes up with plans as well. Plans can change each time, and then you can readjust the situation. But that is something kind of important. That pawn could be weak, and you have to place it on a square where it makes it more difficult for the opponent to attack it and win it. Instead, he played rook e8, and after bishop takes d7, queen takes d7, rook takes a5, white basically f4, f5, no, that's not such a great idea for white, not here. The rook is on, there's no more rook here to attack this side of the board, so you don't want to start pushing that pawn with your little pieces on the other side of the board. Also, the position is not blockaded, so usually when it's not, you have to be careful how you're pushing your pawns. You don't want to start pushing pawns like that at random, weakening your king for no reason. So here, rook takes a5, and in this position, Nihal Sarin probably thought that he could have some drawing idea and blundered. Bishop takes g2. It was probably a tactical oversight. I guess he thought that after king takes, rook takes a5, queen takes a5, he has this check. And then if white plays here, he would have a draw or something. I don't know. But white obviously had king h1, and that now there's no check. So it is not clear to me exactly what he thought. Maybe he thought he takes a lot of material, maybe he thought rook e2, but it's not really, whatever move black chooses to play here, it's not really giving them much chance to get much. So he took here. And since we have extra material and extra knight, we're totally fine with the trade of the queens. Obviously, black is not. He's trying to take more pawns in order to try to equalize. We're threatening rook e2 as well. And white was able to take control and attack. Now, queen a7 would have been an option, but then the knight comes in, I think. Knight h4, knight f5. Extra knight is hard to beat. Black had this idea in mind, and let's see if you guys find a good move for white in this position. In the game, white gave this check that maybe wasn't the wisest thing to do, but it is more technical, I think, to trade rooks, go king g2, and then king g1. You've got a couple more checks, but then there's knight f1. If you give me this check, then I can go king f1, and I'm trying to hide away on the other side of the board. If queen e1, knight f1, that's the idea. And I don't know if you guys know, but knights are usually the best pieces to protect the king against queen checks. So this could make it safe. Instead, white went for this check, and then queen e4 check. Kind of a crazy tactical idea, just hanging the queen, thinking, okay, you kind of have to take, rook takes, and maybe black thought that he should be able to hold on in this position because he saw rook d4, and he probably thought he can somehow trade those two pawns, and then, you know, it's not possible queen and rook and knight to win so easily. That was probably in his mind. But what happened is, like any d5, white can push c5 as well. White doesn't need to trade. And now it's an endgame, so white brought in the king towards the center, and I really like the technique of white is almost flawless. King e2, g5, and now it's kind of an interesting choice. Probably h3 is a little bit better to stop g4, but it's a really interesting idea. And thankfully for them, I mean, the idea is amazing actually, to come this way and support and trap the rook. But if this were gonna happen, it wouldn't be a big deal. But what happened in the game is that here, after king to d1, black blundered. He played king g3, and now what happened? Black's rook stayed trapped. There's not so much that they could do about it. And what did white do? Obviously, just king c2. I even made a rhyme. And now the king c3 is the threat, and the rook is kind of trapped. So black's only chance to free up the rook is to play f3 to have the opportunity to move it there. But with that move, you're giving another pawn, and now it makes it more difficult for him to stay safe. Here h3, and the rest is just a matter of technique. So g4 was played. Trying to trade pawns is definitely in black's favor, because rook knight versus rook is supposed to be a draw. I think I said that already. If you guys are watching me stream for Twitch, you probably have seen me play that recently. I tried to win it, but it's usually a pretty easy defense, I would say, for the rook. Rook d3, h5, because you cannot protect that pawn. And after taking this pawn, this is a passed pawn that should help white win the game. Just definitely do not blunder it. He played here, rook g3, king e3. The pawn was pushed. I'm just showing you how he's making sure that black's rook is kind of trapped there in g3. He's trying to make sure he does not lose that pawn. That pawn is super important for white. White should never lose that pawn. And then you're trying to chase the rook away so that you're winning the h-pawn. And that's exactly what happened. The rook went, took here, and now it's kind of, as I said, a matter of technique, because that pawn is protected, and all you have to do is chase black's king away, and then just start pushing the pawn. Here, here. Traded the rooks, and then the endgame was won. The endgame was winning, and black resigned. So these were basically the two games of Praggnanandhaa that I wanted to show for today. I felt that that was a very important and interesting tournament. I don't know if you guys watched it. There are lots of interesting games. I chose these two for now because I thought, you know, he was the winner. Definitely a player to look forward to see what the future holds for him. As you can see, top players make mistakes as well. Strong players, grandmasters, they make mistakes as well. It's not just us. When they attack, you know, everyone can make a mistake. You have to be careful. You have to learn when to be greedy, when not to be greedy. That's that. I wonder if any of you have questions. I saw a couple of questions on the stream, but they're not really related to what I was doing. So I will try my best to answer one of them. If I know some Rubinstein book, I'm not sure which one you're talking about. So are you talking about the Endgame one? The Rubinstein Endgame book? That one is a good one, actually, if that's the one you're talking about. That's a pretty good book if you can find it. I don't know. Maybe you can find it. St. Louis Chess Club may have it on their site, or if you're in St. Louis, you can go check out the club and see. I remember they used to have it there. If not, you can always check USCF sales. And if you're in the United States, if not, I don't know, check out some chess stores, and I'm sure you can eventually find the book. It is a nice book with endgames. Lishitsyn book of endgames was very, very good. Dvoretsky's endgame manual is good for players over 2200, and Silman's endgame course, I think is called, is also a good endgame book that you may want to work on. I don't know if there's another question. I think I answered most of your questions, guys. I don't know if there's anything that I didn't answer. I hope you guys liked my choices of today. They're not like brilliant games or anything, but I think they were interesting games with ideas on both sides. Tactical ideas are easily missed by everyone. Don't forget about psychology in chess. Don't forget about making sure you make your decisions based on the position, not your opponent's rating. Check out tactics all the time. If you have a passed pawn far away, remember that can be a weakness too. That's exactly what happened in this last game for black. He had that a pawn passed, and he probably thought, oh, that pawn is just so amazing, but it turned out to be a weakness. So just because it's a far away passed pawn, it doesn't mean that your opponent now will not do anything. He will be super happy, and that's it. He will resign. Nobody will resign. They will play. They will play, and that pawn you saw proved to be a weakness. I don't know. If there's any other questions? I don't see any other questions from you guys. I think I will finish here this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed my choices of the day. Please do subscribe for St. Louis Chess Club's YouTube channel. There are definitely lots of interesting videos showing every single day you wouldn't want to miss. Being subscribed to the channel helps you be notified when we go live, what videos we're posting, and anything on that matter. The club is also streaming on Twitch. That's another place that you may want to follow the club. Check out the social media as well, just to be on track with tournaments. Over the board tournaments may come soon, so it'd be great to see some of you there. And without further ado, I wish you all a wonderful evening or morning, depending on where you are, and I hope to see you in future videos on Sunday. Actually, I'm not sure. I better not say anything. I'm looking forward to seeing you in future videos. Enjoy your day. Bye for now.